Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hey, it's a great day. I'm Mark Imperial, and welcome to the program. In this segment, we'll meet financial professional Gary Duell. Gary is a seasoned pro with decades of broad experience in financial services. He's evolved with his aging clientele and with amazing tech innovations. Gary has a fairly unique stance in the financial services industry, having voluntarily submitted to a fiduciary standard 9 years ago, and we'll ask him exactly what that means and why it's important. As a result, Gary is holistic, unbiased, and comprehensive in his mission to relieve the stress of planning for and living in retirement. Gary also writes the number 2 financial blog in the state of Oregon. Gary, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Gary, tell us about Duell Wealth Preservation and the types of clients that you serve.
Well, first, I just wanted to say that I do have the number 2 financial blog in Oregon, but there's probably only 2 of them in Oregon. So
it's still quite an accomplishment, I'm telling you.
That is. Well, as you mentioned, over the years, I've evolved into a holistic, independent, and transparent approach in dealing with my clients, primarily because I need to treat them as complete humans. They're more than just a math problem. I voluntarily submitted to a fiduciary standard back in 2007, which says that I commit to putting my clients' interests ahead of my own or my firm's. As you've probably heard in the news, Wall Street is fighting a universal fiduciary standard tooth and nail. So I'm enjoying differentiating myself from that whole ethic. So as a result, we're holistic. We look at the whole person, and we use several tools to assess not only the financial condition of our clients, but also how they feel about life and themselves and their families and their future prospects. I'm independent. I'm not beholden to any particular company, so I have the full range of the market at my disposal. And I make every effort to be transparent. Every choice out there has pros and cons, and I think everyone is capable of understanding the positives as well as the negatives of the choices that they have. As far as clients, I deal with middle and high income individuals, couples, and business owners of all ages. Probably the type of person that is most attracted to my classes are pre- and post-retirees who have never developed a cash flow plan.
Gary, what do you feel are the biggest myths or misconceptions when it comes to retirement planning?
Probably the most current prevailing myth has to do with Social Security, that it's going bankrupt, that it's not going to be there for them, much less for their kids. And that's pretty much what you see in the press, that it's going to run out of money in 11, 12 years, which is absolutely not true.
Yeah, could you tell us more about that? What are the facts about that?
Well, sure. The Social Security trust funds are managed under the Department of the Treasury by a group of trustees. We currently have a $2.4 trillion surplus. That's a surplus. The trustees keep about $800,000 in cash to pay current benefits, and right now, enough tax revenue comes in that we're not even having to draw down the surplus. In fact, it's still growing. So under current trends, if no changes are made, we'll be able to pay out 100% benefits until 2075.
Well, that's good news. So
yeah.
Are there any other misconceptions or myths that you can think of that come up?
Well, I think the next one that I see is that you see in the media all the time, the financial entertainers, is that you can't retire unless you have at least $1 million. But it all depends on your budget and other sources of income. And most plans I review as, giving a second opinion don't even take Social Security into account. But for the average couple, they will collect over $1 million during their lifetimes from Social Security. So most couples have an asset worth $1 million. So aside from those two big misconceptions that Social Security is going bankrupt and that you need $1 million to retire, there are some other issues that are confusing folks, and I think scaring them away from consulting with a planner. I think part of it is that Wall Street is very powerful and have a vested interest in concealing how they operate, frankly.
Yeah, I'd imagine a lot of people are afraid of that.
Yeah. So you have probably seen in the news that the Department of Labor, this is a boring topic, but I think it's important. Department of Labor is pursuing a universal fiduciary standard, which essentially says anyone who gives financial advice must put the client's interests first. Well, Wall Street and the insurance companies are fighting this tooth and nail for obvious reasons. Then they would have trouble selling their proprietary products unless they could say they are the best on the market. I think this misinformation is probably the most damaging, that people expect any financial professional to put their interests first, but in the majority of cases, that's not happening. A second thing is a lack of information about a fairly technical risk, which is called sequence of returns risk. And what this says is that, let's say you're going to live 20 years in retirement, and your broker says, well, I think I can get you an 8% average return over those 20 years. Well, that sounds pretty good. But what if on the day you retire, we have a repeat of 2001 to 2003, which was 3 years of double-digit losses? If you're losing money in your retirement account and drawing it down at the same time, you'll never recover from that. So even though you'll get an 8% average return, you could still run out of money. And finally, I think one rule of thumb that has been used for decades, the 4% rule, no longer applies. What the 4% rule says is that if you have a balanced portfolio of stocks and bonds and you only draw down 4% per year, then your money will last 30 years. Well, in a lot of cases, people can afford to draw down more, 4, 6, 10%. It just depends on their other guaranteed sources of income. So I think some people are anticipating an impoverished retirement when in fact they could live well and still not run out of funds.
Right on. So you mentioned a fear of Wall Street, for example. Is that like the biggest fear, or what would you say is the most common fear people have about their finances working with an advisor?
Well, I think trust is the number one issue, and a very tiny minority of advisors get way, way too much attention in the media. I know I've been a little hard on Wall Street so far, but the vast majority of, even stockbrokers do actually have their clients' best interest at heart. But on a weekly basis, you hear about a brand new Ponzi scheme where cash is collected by an advisor, to the tune of millions and millions, and they don't actually invest it. They buy themselves yachts and vacation homes and breast implants. So,
Oh, wow.
This tiny minority gets way overreported in the media. And, the media likes to get a rise out of us because that bonds us to them and makes us read them more. But the perception is way skewed that things are worse than they really are.
Oh, I can totally understand that because we have so much access to media today that all
Oh, yeah.
we're seeing like everything, when back in the day you didn't see nearly everything that was going on.
Yeah, and in fact, things are probably better than they've ever been as far as disclosure and transparency. And, again, the internet has made that possible. You can find out just about anything about anybody. So if you're on the phone with your broker and he makes a claim, you can look it right up.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
probably the most powerful negative force is that people don't trust themselves. They don't trust their own judgment, either because they've gotten burned by somebody that they trusted implicitly, like a good friend or someone they met at church. So they feel stupid or gullible, or they've made a big mistake and have withdrawn into their shell ever since. But everybody's made mistakes. And this fear of the unknown can be very destructive if it's causing you to procrastinate and not take what could be some very timely steps. So I find in general, clients want to know what's going to happen, and they want some control over that process.
That makes a lot of sense. So what are some of the little-known pitfalls or common mistakes that folks make when they're trying to do a comprehensive financial plan that you'd like to make people aware of?
Well, I have to confess, I actually contributed to this. We used to generate plans that were 50, 60 pages, and we handed folks a nice binder, which just ended up sitting on the shelf. So it's the GIGO principle: garbage in, garbage out. The plan looked nice, had color charts, but what did it really mean? And did they ever understand it or follow it? Typical plans these days use what's called a Monte Carlo simulation, where you're given odds. Well, if you save this much and spend this much and can get this rate of return, then the odds are 90% that you will have enough money. Well, what if you're that remaining 10% that doesn't fit into the probabilities? These plans don't take into account all the pros and cons. I do. And my rule of thumb is that unless the worst case scenario we can design is acceptably managed, then we're not done.
Yeah, it's just good business. So, Gary, what inspired you personally to become an independent advisor?
Well, I got my MBA back in 1977. I'm revealing my age here. And went straight into a management training program with Farmers Insurance Group. My goal was to, be an executive, corporate executive. I had never even thought of being self-employed or even independent. But one day in 1981, my boss said something to me that convinced me I could no longer work there.
What's that?
She said, "You're fired." To be honest with you, Mark, I stole that from a Lee Child interview on NPR. But it is true. She did say, "Quit or get fired." We did not get along. So I'd like to say that initially I abandoned the corporate ladder and became a farmer's agent out of a passion for service. That did come later, but it was a new wife, mortgage, and a baby that was the primary motivator. But that was 1981. I've been self-employed ever since and have never looked back.
So, Gary, can you share a lesson that you learned early on that still impacts how you perform your service today?
Absolutely. And I feel really fortunate that I had great mentors when I got started. Primarily George Buchholz, whose agency I took over back in 1981. He constantly admonished us. He had a group of us that he took under his wing, but he constantly admonished us to read, reread, and read again every contract that we sold. The devil is in the details, he said repeatedly. That served me well because if we had relied just on the marketing department for our information, we probably would have gotten sued. But what I learned is that every policy, every contract, every financial product and service has pros and cons, and you've got to tell people about both sides. So I evolved very early into being very transparent and frank with people rather than worrying about pleasing them all the time and making a sale.
Gary, what's one more thing that we may not have covered that you could share with someone who's wanting to feel more confident in their retirement?
I think the most important belief you can have, and I really believe this, is that you are capable of understanding the advice you're given. You are capable of understanding everything you need to know. So don't just give up and let yourself be worn down and agree to something that you don't understand. So you have a right to insist on evidence and understanding.
What about time commitment? People think that this takes a lot of time.
Well, we're humans. The unknown is probably the scariest thing. So I don't think it's the cost of planning so much is people. Time is our most valuable commodity, and people are concerned about wasting it or being disappointed in the end result if they invest a lot of time.
Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Well, a good place to start would be to review my website, GaryDuell.com. There's a lot of resources on there. I would recommend also a good place to start is to attend one of my classes. It gives you a chance to get exposed to some information and to me, and also ask tough questions without feeling self-conscious about it, which might be hard face-to-face. So those registration links are on the website.
Would you give those the URL out for us?
It's GaryDuell.com. That's Gary, D as in David, UELL.com.
That's terrific. Hey, Gary, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us on the program today, and I wish you continued success for you and all of your clients.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
I'm Mark Imperial, and this is the program spotlighting noteworthy professionals, experts, and business owners from around the world and in your town. If you know a great business or professional that we should feature on the program, I'd like to hear from you. You could nominate them by emailing me at radio@markimperial.com. Once again, that's radio@markimperial.com. In this next segment, our home stretch, I've got a special treat for you. If you're a business owner or professional, or if you aspire to be one, for over 7 years, I've been interviewing leading experts and business celebrities and sharing their secrets to success with you. From my first show, Entrepreneur's Edge, to Game Changers Radio, to Mad Rocket Business, all the way to Remarkable Radio and this program today, in this home stretch, I'm bringing you a flashback to one of my most popular episodes, covering how to attract clients magnetically using only the power of words and without costly branding. So enjoy this very special edition home stretch, and here we go.
Now, get the edge. Here are Mark and Tom.
Hey, welcome to the show. It's Mark Imperial, another power thinking hour here at Entrepreneur's Edge.
Mark, this is Tom Rebar, and it is time for all the capitalists and all of the entrepreneurs and the self-employed people and the professionals in private practice and all the sales and marketing pros to come out of the woodwork and put their feet up and join together and learn for an hour.
That's right. So welcome back, everybody. And we've got a terrific show. We're recapping a fantastic week that we had here at Entrepreneur's Edge. We just had our Entrepreneur's Edge live event last Wednesday. And boy, it was a hoot. The party was jumping. I'm telling you, they almost had to kick us out of that hotel.
They did, and there's nothing like talking about advertising and copywriting that gets people out of their chairs, because once you start talking about that, people realize that even if you thought you knew everything there was to know about it, you realize there's more to learn and more to still learn.
Yeah, the place was absolutely on fire. We had Conrad Hall and Ken Schreiber join us and speaking on copywriting and writing the words that sell your business. What better way to get to the bullet points of that than to recap what we talked about at Wednesday's event?
Go for it.
And you know what? In fact, if you missed it, you really missed a hugely valuable opportunity to boost your response. Because I'm talking about, we talked about headlines and postcard and copy that got 4 to 5 times the response of another control. So that's a 400 to 500% increase by just changing the words on the paper. How many folks don't think about that?
A whole bunch.
So we started out, one of our guest speakers, Ken Schreiber, he was talking about lead generation and the minute differences about generating leads with your copy as opposed to like using sales conversion. Now, one of the key points and takeaways he talked about, he started out, check this out. The first thing he said when he got up on the stage is he said, "Who here wants a surefire way to get new customers or prospects without any marketing cost?" And all the hands went up, right?
Mine went up.
Yeah.
I was the first one.
Now, guess what? He says that was the first lesson in lead generation. You are trying to identify exactly with the person what is it that they want. So if you have the right market, the right list, and then you give them that question, who wants this solution? And you're talking directly at a person, and they raise their hand and identify. That is it. That's as simple as that. And then you make them an offer that they just can't refuse.
Because all you want is to find out who those people are who are willing to raise their hand.
Yeah, and you could adapt that into any business type that you can. Now look at this. Another key is speaking directly at that target person. If you get a list, if you're doing a postcard mailing, and you know who that customer is you're looking for, you identify it and you speak directly at their problems. You have to identify, and we talked about this. I call it the hidden benefit, because you have to think about your customer and think of all the problems that they have in their lives, because what you are is you're a problem solver. That brings up another point. A lot of business owners, a lot of businesses out there, they make the mistake, and we had some folks talk about this in the room as well. I say, what is your ad about? What was the message you put in your marketing? And they said, well, a discount, a discount or percentage off. And the reality is that they're trying to sell their product directly. And we say that kind of hurts your response, because when you try to sell your product directly, the only people that are responding are those that are ready to buy like your widget or your thing right now.
At that immediate point in time.
So it's about transcending timing. So we're going to be back after this break and continue, because we've got a lot of nuggets that came out of that event on writing words that sell. BusinessEdgeRadio.com. Go to the website, get our free gift, and we'll be right back after this.
Stay with us.
Business owners and entrepreneurs. Once again, here's Mark and Tom.
Hey, welcome back to your Power Thinking Hour for entrepreneurs and business owners. It's Mark Imperial.
This is Tom Rebar. Hey, Mark, let's go back to that the story you were telling right before the break about the person who was going for the jugular and trying to make the big sale right out of the gate. Let's try to make sure we bring the loop fully closed there. What do you do to get around that?
Well, let's see. As I mentioned, a lot of business owners, they think, they're not, they're in the mindset of, I got to sell my thing. So they're focused on, how can I sell my thing? Let me present my product or my service, and let me give a discount or a coupon. That's like the knee-jerk reaction to what they're offering.
And then when people don't buy, right away they think, my price is still too high, so they get into this headset of, now I got a further discount.
Yeah, they're focusing on the wrong thing, and it's because they get a low response rate. But our answer to that, what we know from testing, is that the low response rate is because you're not transcending timing. You're making an offer for people that are ready to buy right that minute. But then when somebody is in the buying cycle, but they're not just quite ready to buy yet, and maybe a month down the road, they forgot all about you. You're only picking up the immediate buyers. You have to find a way to transcend the timing, and we do that with lead generation.
And it has nothing to do with price. So
that's right.
Get price out of your head, that it's not that your price is too high.
That's often the last thing to even consider is the price. I mean, the example that I'm going to give you and for the listeners is we had a terrific home remodeling company in the audience and asked us how do we directly link what we're talking about here at the event to his type of business. I said, is there a business that feels like they don't know how to link this lead generation strategy to theirs? And then he raised his hand and he said, home remodeling. What do I do? And I said, what are you doing currently to get your business? He said, I did a mailing. What was the offer on the mailing? It was a discount of some sort. And we told him the same thing. You're selling a discount. You're only going to pick up the buyers ready to buy now. And then he said, well, what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is you want to find people that may not just be thinking about buying right now, but maybe they're already in their head. You know what? 6 months from now, a year from now, I know I'm going to have a move. How are you going to get those people to identify themselves so you can continue to stay in front of them? Well, we said, why don't you offer a report called, the 7 deadly traps and how to avoid them, how to save blah, blah, blah on your remodeling costs, how to get how to remodel your kitchen, your home or whatever, and save the maximum. 7 deadly traps, a report that is going to be useful to that prospect. That way, even if it's 6 months or a year from now that they're thinking about the move, they still want that free report. That little trick alone increases the response 4 or 5 times. Easily.
And you could tell that this fella, because I was sitting across the room from him, he had a big smile on his face as soon as you started to unveil that story, because you could tell right away he got it. Mm-hmm. And head kind of went back into oh, that makes sense right away to him. So
that's right.
He was a very smart person.
Yeah. So, back to the list of what Ken Schreiber was speaking about. He's, another nugget was speak directly at him. Who is it that you're mailing to and what is their direct problem? The next point is the everyone's favorite radio station besides WIND is WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Exactly.
So that, literally the headline or the message that you put on your mailing pieces has to address directly at them because it has to pass that test. Conrad Hall mentioned this, the so what test. You read your headline, whatever you consider your headline, and run it through your own head and say, okay, I read something and so what? Is it going to make you say so what, or is it going to intrigue you to read further?
Well, in fact, he even suggests to do that for every one of your bullets. When you put the bullet there, just read it out loud and say, now, so what? What is that person going to answer if they read it and you say, so what, to give yourself a chance to substantiate that bullet in your head?
Yes, that's right.
Is it a worthy bullet?
Yep. And I have a litmus test actually for you. Let's first of all, let's wrap up with what Conrad was talking about before we even go into the litmus test on headlines. But, Conrad has a great description for copywriting. He said it's the art of using words to create action. Now think about that. The art of using words to create action. How many folks really think of their advertising in that way? The most of the time I see people doing an advertisement, it's like the name of their company or their logo. How does that create any action?
One of the best testimonials for last night was I brought my assistant along to your summit. He is just beginning to think about the art of copywriting. And when we left, he said that was one of the best meetings he's ever been to. And he got more notes in a short period of time about how to write copy than he ever thought he would by coming along last night.
It's incredible. And, a lot of the stuff that, many of our pros in Mastermind, for example, we take it for granted because we've been so immersed in this kind of marketing, but it's eye-opening for many. For example, one of the big keys that was huge for everyone in the room was when Ken Schreiber described, and remember the headline, who else here wants to know how to acquire new customers and prospects without any acquisition cost? Right. Now, how do you do it without acquisition cost? Well, if you were at the summit, I don't have enough time in the next 4 minutes to tell you, but you can do, it was a brilliant strategy he had. about liquidating your marketing costs.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be at Entrepreneur's Edge live events. And these are the kind of things that we talk about. So, this is probably the best time ever to give a plug for the next live event. Make sure you go to Business Edge Live or businessedgeradio.com, click on the live events tab, and you're going to find the next meeting in Madison, the next meeting in Green Bay, and the next meeting in Oak Brook. Hey, we've only got about a minute here, and I want to talk about one bullet. I have about 12 here.
Go ahead.
But let's talk about the headline, because what is the headline? The headline of your ad is the ad for your ad. Does that make sense? And what is the only job of the headline?
The only job of the headline is to shout it out and get somebody to be interested in taking the next step, which is to read what else is there.
Read the next line, absolutely. And it's the most valuable real estate on your ad or your postcard or your mailing. And what do most companies inadvertently waste in that space? What do they do in that space instead?
How many people put the name of their company or their logo up at the top of the ad or the top of their website, and then they wonder why nobody's reading it? It's because they never had a headline there.
Hey, in the wrap-up, I'm going to give my litmus test for great headlines for all the listeners. After the break, Tom Apicella from Think Spaces in Naperville, Illinois, will be joining us to give us his tips, tricks, and secrets for furnishing your office. We'll be right back. BusinessEdgeRadio.com.
We'll be here. Stay with us. BusinessEdgeRadio.com for all the events.
Hey, we're back. It's Mark Imperial.
And this is Tom Rebar. We are in the home stretch again, Mark. I can't believe another week has gone by so fast.
That's right. Hey, we're back here with Tom Apicella from Think Spaces in Naperville, Illinois. Hey, Tom, I wanted to ask you just recently joined our mastermind group here at Entrepreneur's Edge. Can you tell me what drew you to the group and what you're getting out of it so far?
Well, what drew me to the mastermind group is, I want to have other like-minded entrepreneurs and people that I can basically bounce ideas off of, talk about my business to help expand it. Because as a lot of people know, there's a lot of businesses in one business that you can extrapolate from. So just having that, and then it's also, for accountability when you come up with new strategies and ideas, there's some accountability because they're going to ask you, well, what did you do with what you said you were going to do with last month?
Yeah.
And, action is the way to make things happen in business.
That's terrific. And now for the folks listening, whether they're a property manager or a business owner looking to move or improve their spaces, how can they get a hold of you for your information?
You can go to thinkspaces.net and you can fill out one of our interior design contact forms, or there's a phone number on there that you can call, 630-324-4598.
Tom, it was terrific having you on the show. Thank you for coming out today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Enjoy the show.
Terrific. Thank you. Tom, we're on the home stretch now.
We are. I can't believe it.
Now, I promised a litmus test for people to test whether their headlines are any good.
So give them.
All right, here it is. Now, this is sort of like the classified test, if you think of like a classified ad. And what are the classified ads all about? It's usually a small, tiny little ad, right?
Very small.
With just, you don't have enough room to put anything but a blurb and a call to action, a CTA, like a phone number, right?
That's exactly right.
So what you do is you take whatever you think is your headline and then you neuter out everything else and just put your phone number or whatever your response mechanism is under it. And if the two make sense and entice you to move forward, like let me give you an example. What do most people use as their headline that's wrong? And we talk about this a lot. The company name, right?
Name and maybe a logo.
So let's look at the litmus test. A to Z painting, phone number. Now, is that entice you to take any action?
So who'd call with A to Z painting and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9?
That's right. There's no words that cause action. Now, what if the headline, let me think just off of the top of my head here. Let's use an example for a bowling alley, okay? Something weird. Now, what if the headline said how to bowl a 300 every time and then a phone number? Now, that causes you a little bit more enticement to call that number.
Sure
So
would.
there's a difference between that's the litmus test. Take your headline and put just the headline and the phone number or response mechanism. And is that enough to make somebody take some action? That's the litmus test.
Great test.
So that makes every word count.
Hopefully nobody just puts that in an ad, a headline and a phone number. It'd be nice to have a little more copy than that. But I understand what the litmus test is.
Yes, absolutely. So that's what we talked about, and it's about all the time we had to talk about today was headlines, but It's the most important piece. What else do we know about headlines? Headlines are the most important part of the ad. You remember at the event, I gave you 3 headlines that were tested, and I'll tell you what. Let's do the test right now. One of the headlines got 5 times the response of the other 2. Was it headline A, I've never been able to get a good portrait of my child until now? Or B, finally a children's portrait worth more than the paper it's printed on? Or C, the best children's portrait at the right price guaranteed? You know, we did this test. People raised their hand. The room was about split. But the answer is B. And again, we said, what's the reason why? Everyone gave reasons that they thought why B won. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. You just have to test.
And everybody's afraid to test.
And guess what? They didn't change any other part of the ad.
Customer.
Just the headline.
Hey, go out to businessedgeradio.com. We have Wayne Brightbath coming this next month in March up in Green Bay and Madison. He's going to talk about business use of LinkedIn. Unbelievable ideas. So come and see us.
See you later. Hey, it's Mark Imperial. I hope you enjoyed those highlights. Again, if you know a professional or business that we should feature on the show, you could nominate them by emailing me at radio@markimperial.com. One more time, that's radio@markimperial.com. Until next time, this is Mark Imperial. Make it a remarkable week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.